You did everything right. You spent 40 years brown bagging your lunch, maxing out your 401k, saying no to the boat, saying no to the beach house, saying no to basically anything fun. And then one day you check your account, and there it is. $1 million. The number. The magic number that every financial guru, every magazine cover, every slightly too confident guy at a dinner party told you was the finish line. So, you retire. You pop the champagne. You tell your boss exactly what you think of his Tuesday morning all-hands meetings. And then about 6 months in, you start doing the math at night. And the math is not vibing with the champagne. Here's the thing nobody puts on the motivational poster. $1 million sounds like private jet and a lake house money, but the actual math turns it into something closer to store-brand cereal and a very modest used car money. And it's not because you did anything wrong, it's because there are 5 forces quietly working against every retiree right now: inflation, healthcare, taxes, market timing, and the psychological trap of the number itself. We're going to run the actual numbers today. Not the glossy brochure version, the real version. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why $1 million isn't a retirement number, it's just the starting point for the actual math. Let's start with the rule everyone quotes, but almost nobody actually examines. The 4% rule. The idea is simple. If you withdraw 4% of your savings every year, your money should last through a 30-year retirement without running out. Sounds clean. Sounds reliable. Sounds like a plan. Here's where it came from. A researcher named William Bengen ran an analysis in 1994. Yes, 1994, the year Forrest Gump came out, using historical market data to figure out the safest withdrawal rate for retirees. That research became the foundation of basically every retirement planning conversation that happened after it. But here's the problem. It was built for a 30-year retirement window. Retire at 65, live to 95, done. Except people are now routinely living into their 90s and beyond. So the window got longer and the math got shakier, but the rule never got updated. It's like using a 1994 map to navigate a city that's been completely rebuilt. Now let's do the actual math. 4% of $1 million is $40,000 a year. That's your annual retirement income before taxes. $40,000 a year. That's not sipping cocktails on a yacht money. That's checking whether the gas station has a rewards card money. That's $3,300 a month before the government takes its cut. To cover your mortgage or rent, your utilities, your food, your car, your insurance, your travel, your hobbies, and everything else that makes retirement worth retiring to. And that $40,000, it's already getting eaten alive before you spend a single dollar of it. Okay, so imagine you've got a tire, not a blown-out tire, not a dramatic flat on the highway tire, just a slow leak, the kind where you wake up every morning and it looks mostly fine. But every single day, a little more air's gone. And if you ignore it long enough, one day you walk out to your car and the tire is completely flat, and you're standing in your driveway in your pajamas wondering what happened. That's inflation. And it's coming for your $40,000 a year, whether you're paying attention or not. Here's how it actually works. Inflation is just the idea that the same dollar buys less stuff every year. A coffee that cost $2 in 2005 costs $5 now. Same coffee, more dollars. The purchasing power of your money quietly shrinks year after year, like a wool sweater and a hot dryer. At a historically normal 3% inflation rate, your purchasing power gets cut in half in roughly 24 years. Not because you spent it, not because you made bad investments, just because time passed. Now connect that to a real retirement timeline. You retire at 65. You live to 90. That's 25 years. You are sitting almost exactly inside that cut-in-half window, which means the $40,000 you're drawing in year 1 needs to buy you the same life that will cost $80,000 by the time you're in your late 80s. You're not spending more. Stuff just costs more. And here's the part that should make you set down your coffee. The grocery cart that cost you $100 in 2010 costs roughly $180 today. Same groceries, same cart, probably the same brand of pasta you've been buying since the 90s. Just $180 now instead of $100. Here's the cruel twist. The investments retirees traditionally feel safest in: bonds, CDS, fixed annuities, often barely, keep pace with inflation. So, You think you're being responsible and conservative, but you're basically running on a treadmill, moving your feet, staying in place, feeling tired. And this is where something called the spending smile comes in. Most people picture retirement spending as a flat line. Same amount every year, nice and predictable. But that's not what actually happens. Retirees spend more money in early retirement because they're healthy and active and finally doing all the stuff they put off for 40 years. Travel, golf, spoiling the grandkids. Then spending dips a little in the middle years. Then it spikes again in late retirement because of healthcare. When you draw that curve on a graph, it looks like a smile. So inflation isn't hitting a flat, predictable expense line. It's hitting a curve that's already high on both ends. The damage compounds at exactly the moments when you're spending the most. You retire excited, you spend a lot. Inflation is eating your purchasing power, and 20 years later you're spending a lot again, but now everything costs twice as much. Speaking of that second spending spike, let's talk about the single biggest financial wildcard in any retirement plan. All right, deep breath, because this section is where the math stops being uncomfortable and starts being genuinely alarming. Healthcare is the #1 retirement expense that people consistently underestimate, not by a little, by a lot. We're talking forgot a zero territory. Fidelity estimates that a couple retiring today needs roughly $315,000 set aside just for healthcare costs throughout retirement. And before you say, well, I'll have Medicare so I'm covered, no, you're partially covered. There's a big difference. Here's what Medicare actually does. It covers hospital stays, doctor visits, and some outpatient care. Here's what it does not cover: dental, vision, hearing aids, most long-term care, and a significant chunk of prescription, drug costs depending on your plan. So you've got this retirement safety net with some surprisingly large holes in it. And every one of those holes costs real money every single month. Medicare. Part B alone, that's your standard medical insurance, runs over $170 a month per person right now. Add a supplemental Medigap policy to cover the gaps, and you're looking at another $150 to $300 a month on top of that. Per person. Multiply by 2 for a couple. Multiply by 25 years for a full retirement. The number gets big fast. But the real ambush? Long-term care. And I call it an ambush because most people genuinely do not see it coming until someone in their family needs it. The median annual cost of a private nursing home room in the United States is over $100,000 per year. Memory care facilities often run higher. And here's the brutal reality of the statistics. Roughly 70% of people turning 65 today will need some form of long-term care at some point. This isn't a fringe scenario. This is the most likely scenario. Let's do that damage math. 2 years in a memory care facility wipes out $200,000. That's 20% of your entire $1 million nest egg. Gone. On one single expense. Not on travel or fun or anything you planned for. Just gone. And here's the demographic layer that doesn't get talked about enough. Women live longer than men on average, roughly 5 to 6 years longer, which means statistically, women face more years of solo retirement, more years of healthcare costs, and a higher chance of needing long-term care. A surviving spouse is often managing the financial fallout of a partner's care costs, while simultaneously facing their own future care needs. On a portfolio that just took a serious hit. Now stack all of this on top of what we've already covered. You've got $40,000 a year from your 4%. Withdrawal. Inflation is shrinking what that buys every single year. And now healthcare is sitting in the corner waiting to take a $200,000 bite out of your savings the moment your health gets complicated. Which, statistically, it will. There's a dark joke in there somewhere. You spent 40 years staying healthy enough to retire, and the reward for all that discipline is being healthy enough to afford being sick. The fix, at least partially, exists, and we'll get to it. But right now, there's a third attacker that most people completely overlook, and it doesn't wear scrubs. It wears a suit and carries a briefcase, and its name is the IRS. Here's a fantasy a lot of people carry into retirement. They think once they stop getting a paycheck, their tax bill basically disappears. No salary, no taxes. Simple. Clean. Finally, one less thing to stress about. Yeah, that's not how this works. The IRS does not care that you're retired. The IRS does not care that you spent 40 years contributing to the system. The IRS has absolutely zero interest in your freedom from Tuesday morning meetings. The IRS wants its cut every single year until you die. And then it wants one more cut from your estate, but that's a whole separate video. Here's the thing about most retirement savings. Your 401k, your traditional IRA, all that money went in pre-tax, which felt great when you were contributing because it lowered your taxable income every year. But that deal has a catch. Every dollar you pull out in retirement gets taxed as ordinary income. The government didn't forget about that money. It was just waiting. So when you draw $40,000 from your traditional IRA, that $40,000 is taxable income. Add in Social Security, which we'll get to in a second, and suddenly you've got a real tax bill in a year where you thought you'd barely owe anything. Now let's talk about required minimum distributions, because this is the part that genuinely catches people off guard. At age 73, the IRS legally requires you to start withdrawing money from your pre-tax retirement accounts, whether you need the money or not. You could have plenty of other income. Doesn't matter. The government wants those taxes it's been deferring, and it has a schedule for collecting them. Those forced withdrawals can push you into a higher tax bracket, which means you might be pulling out more money than you planned and owing more taxes than you budgeted for. You don't get to just let it sit and keep compounding. Uncle Sam has a calendar. And then there's the Social Security trap. A lot of people think Social Security is tax-free. It is not. Depending on your total income, up to 85% of your Social Security benefits can become taxable. You read that right? Money the government collected from your paychecks your entire working life, taxed again when you get it back. The financial equivalent of paying for a sandwich, waiting 30 years, and then paying again before they hand it to you. Here's a real-world scenario. A retiree pulling $50,000 from a traditional IRA and receiving $24,000 in Social Security could easily owe $8,000 to $10,000 in federal taxes. Their gross income looks like $74,000. Their actual take-home is significantly less. And that's before state taxes. Some states are genuinely generous to retirees. Others will tax your pension, your IRA withdrawals, and your Social Security without blinking. Most people never factor their retirement state into their retirement math, which is leaving real money on the table. So that $40,000 4% withdrawal from your $1 million portfolio, after taxes, you're not working with $40,000. You're working with something noticeably smaller, and you've still got inflation and healthcare eating from the other end. Okay, so we've talked about inflation, healthcare, and taxes all taking swings at your retirement. But this last one is different, because this one isn't an external force coming at you. This one lives inside your head. $1 million feels like a finish line, and that feeling is completely understandable. Round numbers hit differently in the human brain. There's something about hitting 1 million that signals completion. Done, arrived, safe. Every movie, every magazine, every financial ad for the last 30 years has used that number as the symbol for made it. But the market doesn't care about round numbers. The market doesn't know it's supposed to applaud when your account hits 7 digits. Here's something called sequence of returns risk, and it is one of the most underappreciated dangers in retirement math. The order in which you experience market gains and losses matters enormously, especially in your first few years of retirement. If the market crashes in year 1 or 2 of your retirement, and you're already withdrawing money to live on, you're selling shares at the worst possible time. Your portfolio shrinks, you have fewer shares to recover when the market bounces back, and that permanent damage follows you for the rest of your retirement. Here's the concrete version of that. 2 retirees both start with $1 million. Both average 7% returns over 20 years. But one of them gets the bad years at the beginning, and one gets them at the end. Same average. Completely different outcomes. The one who got hit early can run out of money a full decade before the other person. Same number, same average return, different sequence. Wildly different retirement. This is why the market always comes back, is only half the answer. Yes, it does. But if you're withdrawing money while it's down, you don't get to fully participate in the recovery. You've already spent those shares. Now layer on the lifestyle problem. The people who actually accumulate $1 million have usually been living a certain kind of life, a house in a decent area, 2 cars, regular vacations, kids' activities, dinner out, that life doesn't cost $40,000 a year. It costs $60, $80, maybe $100,000 a year. And the moment you retire, you don't automatically want to live a completely different life. You want to live your life, just without the commute. So you've got $1 million generating $40,000 a year, and your actual life costs $80,000. The math doesn't math. Not even close. And then the really cruel psychological trap kicks in. Fear of running out of money causes people to spend less than they safely could. They pass on the trip. They skip the home repair. They eat through their enjoyment years being stressed about numbers, and then they die with a large account balance and a pile of unlived experiences. That's not a win. That is its own kind of financial failure. The real question has never been, do I have $1 million? The real question is, what does my specific life actually cost? And do I have 25 times that number saved? That's the 25 times rule. It's just the 4% withdrawal rate flipped around. If your life costs $80,000 a year, your number isn't 1 million, it's 2 million. If your life costs $120,000 a year, your number is 3 million. 1 million only works if your life genuinely costs $40,000 a year. And for most people who've spent decades building a comfortable life, that number is a significant step down. $1 million isn't a retirement. It's a starting point for the actual calculation. So here's what we've actually been building this whole video. Not 5 separate problems, 5 multipliers that hit you at the same time. Inflation erodes what every dollar buys. Healthcare ambushes your budget with costs that are both predictable and completely hard to pin down. Taxes shrink every withdrawal before you see a dime of it. Sequence of returns risk can permanently damage your portfolio in the first years when you're most vulnerable. And the psychological anchor of $1 million was never calibrated to your actual spending in the first place. But here's the part that makes it a chain reaction instead of a checklist. One bad healthcare year forces you to sell investments at whatever price the market is offering that day. That's sequence of returns risk activated by a medical bill. That sale creates a larger taxable withdrawal. That larger withdrawal reduces your inflation-adjusted purchasing power going forward. Each force triggers the next one. They don't line up politely, they pile on. The fix isn't panic. It's recalibrating your target to your real spending and building buffers for the surprises that are, at this point, entirely predictable. 3 things you can actually do with this information right now. First, calculate your real number. Add up what your life actually costs per year, everything, and multiply by 25. That is your retirement target, not $1 million. Your number. Second, check your tax diversification. If every dollar you've saved is sitting in a pre-tax account, start looking at Roth conversions while you're still in a lower bracket. Future, you will be genuinely grateful. Third, price out long-term care insurance before you turn 60. It gets dramatically more expensive after that, and harder to qualify for. Don't let it be the thing you wish you'd handled sooner. If this math was useful, hit subscribe, because we do this kind of actual number crunching every week. And drop a comment below with the retirement number you were told to chase. Let's see how it holds up.